Welcome back to theLAGolf.com. I am David Garner, your host, and today we have on Odie Vincent. He is the executive director of the Northern Trust Open. Now, Odie's had a pretty remarkable career in golf, and I have some interesting insights that I would love to just get his take on, just about his career and definitely the Northern Trust Open. Odie, how are you doing today?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me on.
So I usually start off with two questions. The first question is favorite golf course, favorite hole that you've played at in the last year?
In the last year, okay. Well, I haven't played a lot of golf in the last year, so I'd say the favorite golf course I've had a chance to play this last year is a course called Gamble Sands, which is a golf course that's going to open to the public here this summer in August. Had a chance to play it with a former player of mine who now plays on the PGA Tour named Kevin Chappell, and he was getting married, and we had a chance to go around about after a month, after it was seeded. And so having that place to yourself, and it's this David McClay Kidd course in the middle of the state of Washington, and one of those if you build it they will come type places, and we had an awesome day up there. So that was a special experience and a lot of fun. And favorite hole would be probably any hole that I can make birdie on nowadays when I get out. And I can't remember which hole that was, so but I'll take any of them.
The practical answer, yes. Now the second question I usually ask is why golf? I mean, we're going to talk about your career, but what initially hooked you to golf?
My father is still in the golf business, and I grew up in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and he was the pro at a course there called Edgewood Tahoe. And in Lake Tahoe, you have snow 6 months of the year, and sunshine and snow off the ground the other 6. So it was real seasonal. And he would play a few holes after golf or after he was off work, and I would run after him on the golf cart, and he just told me to keep up. And so I always learned how to play fast, because if I slowed down, I couldn't play anymore. So I would just hit it and run until I was tired and pick it up. So I just grew up with the game and really, really always enjoyed kind of time on my own and loved the pursuit, and really started playing in tournaments and things when I was like 11 or 12 years old. So but I think I was real lucky to grow up in a seasonal climate, because I never got burned out, because by the time you'd start getting tired, the weather wouldn't allow you to play anymore. And I think it was, just a real natural blessing I had growing up.
So with that initial push from your father and just having the benefits of him being a club pro, did you ever see yourself having a career in golf?
I always thought, growing up, I always thought that I would, be the next, superstar in the PGA Tour was what I thought, and playing. I never thought of a career in golf other than playing golf, though, to answer that question. No, I never, not as a kid. No, I didn't.
Yeah, no, that's the one of the things that, to me is so fascinating. I mean, I grew up playing football, basketball, what have you, and, it's pretty clear cut. You play, and then you either get into management or coaching, and that's it. With golf, it's so wide open, and you could be a player, you could play a club, you can be a club pro, you can be a club fitter, you can be a golf merchandise guy, you can be a director of golf operations, you can be like yourself one day and be an executive director at a club. Let's talk about college or your amateur status. Like how was that? How was that competing on a more widespread level than just the Tahoe area?
Yeah, good question. A fellow named Robert Gomez, who is the same age as I am and had a long career playing very well on the tour, was from Las Vegas, and I was from Reno, Tahoe area, and we're exactly the same age. And really in Nevada, you'd get together and play, once a year in the state championship, and it would alternate between South and North. And I remember when I was 14, I won the 14 and under state championship in the state of Nevada. And it was the first time I remember driving back from Las Vegas, and it, 7 or 8 hours through the middle of nowhere. And I remember looking out, and I said, wow, I'm the best player, and everywhere I look, I mean, I'm the best player right now in the state. And and it was the first time it ever dawned on me that I was like, this could be, a lot of fun. And then our team, I actually went to high school in California in Palm Springs, and our team won the California State High School, and I won the state high school tournament myself. And that's when it started to get a lot more fun. And I went to college at the University of Washington, won our conference championship, won the Eastern Amateur one summer, and that same summer, and was runner-up in the Canadian Amateur, and was starting to get a little bit of momentum. And for me, I had I had a lot of, I think, relatively a lot of success, and a lot of fun playing. But it's hard, ups and downs, and the travel and this and that. So when I finished school, I went to the European Q School, because there really wasn't. There was like 7 or 8 Hogan Tour events back in those days. And if you weren't, making it on tour, which, not many guys were coming out of school and playing on tour in those days, I wanted to give myself a chance to play against some of the best players still. And I qualified for that tour, and I played for a year over on the European Tour in 1992, and got to play in the British Open that year at Muirfield, and again had the ups and downs of traveling the world and having some highs and some lows and everything in between. But my high was in the British Open, coming down the last hole on Sunday. You are in twosomes, and you get a standing ovation from the crowd, because they announce you after you hit your approach shot up to the green, and the stands are full, and they announce what country you're representing. And I remember my dad caddied for me that week, and he and I were standing next to each other. He taught me the game, and I love playing golf back there. And it was one of those things where I said, wait a second, this is the highest whole level that it gets. And here you are as a kid chasing a golf cart when you're 7 or 8 and just running around, and then here's the guy that taught me how to play, and now we're standing here kind of in front of the world at the highest level. It's pretty cool. And for me, that was enough. It really was. I actually at that point started thinking about doing other things with my life, because I thought, this is great. If you're fortunate enough to win and make a lot of money and do this forever, but I always, wanted to pursue other things as well. So, but I really feel good about that, and fortunate that I had that experience with my dad.
So, and that's awesome. I think it's glossed over a lot in sports when we hear athletes or former athletes talk about atmosphere and fans and appreciation and applause. It's one of the few things, looking back on my career, that still gives me goosebumps, just as far as like, if you could bottle it and sell it, it'd be priceless, because it's awesome. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine just that moment, especially just, symbolism in that moment, being with your dad who taught you the game and just soaking it in. Maybe it wasn't even 45 seconds, but it probably felt like hours of just that tingling feeling.
You're right. And I was having dinner a couple nights ago with a former Olympic swimmer. My wife is a swimmer and has known him for a long time. And we had our family at their family's house for dinner, and he was in the '84 Olympics. And long story short, but got injured and ended up not winning a medal. And my wife asked him, does it ever, and he's won Emmys and producing and all these things ever since, been very successful, and asked him, do you ever think about it? He said, well, only every day. And, and we got to talking about how, I don't think, no matter how much success you have in other endeavors, I don't know, once you've had a chance to really compete, and I don't know if people that have competed would agree with this or not, but there's nothing that can replace that. There's a lot of other things that are great, but there's nothing that can actually replace it. And it's a pretty special opportunity to be able to experience it.
Yeah, I totally agree. So you said that that was enough for you, and you were thinking about other things to do with your life, with your time.
Mm-hmm.
You coached at Duke, you coached at UCLA, you coached at Washington. Was that like the next step for you, or did you fall into that?
No, I've kind of fallen into everything I've ever done, but I went to the glitz and glamour of the European tour. I went straight to the greens crew in Las Vegas over the winter, and getting up at 5 a.m. with about a 20-mile-an-hour wind and about 40 degrees. So I started to learn the golf business from the ground up, and I bussed tables. I was in bag drop behind the counter and worked on the greens crew for about 6 months to start. my dad's got a golf management company, and I wanted to learn the ins and outs of the business. So I did that for about 2 years, and and all the things I did worked after 3 years. Starting a project in the construction of a project called Langdon Farms, just outside of Portland, Oregon, and took that project from beginning to end. And ironically, like literally the week after we opened Langdon Farms, and I was working on marketing and group sales and trying to fill that place up, I got a call from a friend of mine at the University of Washington, and this is the women's golf coach still, named Mary Lou Mulfler, and told me that the gentleman that was there for 3 years, who succeeded the coach that I played for, was leaving, and she was going to push for me to be the next coach. And I'd never even crossed my mind to coach college golf. And my father always wanted to build a course that would be the home of the Huskies. He's a longtime Husky fan, and which we ended up doing, called Washington National. And I worked there for 6 years. But I didn't know I'd get the job, but I was only out of school for 4 years at that point. I was 27, just turned 27 when they hired me to be the head coach there. But the team had was not playing well, and we were we just finished 10th in the Pac-10, in the Pac-10 championship the year before, and they didn't pay very much, and and they kind of had nothing to lose, and so and neither did I. So it was a very, very fortunate time, and I did have a chance to coach for 13 years at Washington, UCLA, and Duke, as you mentioned, and I wouldn't trade those years for anything, and it was probably the most fun you could ever have in a job, and the most rewarding job that I think I'll ever have is coaching, and those relationships and the experiences that we all had, and I had to learn. Coaches, they had to learn, to get used to me, because I didn't know what I was doing starting out either. So it was a great, great process.
Yeah. Now take us back a little bit to the college, what you just said. Like, what was your main difficulty, like, just transitioning to teaching young men in college?
I think the biggest challenge, and what I'm most proud of probably of anything I've ever done, is you have to take the focus off of yourself in being a successful coach, and you have to apply it to everyone else. You kind of come last in a way, as far as in the priorities, and that's a lot to swallow, especially as a younger person and someone just coming off competing. I learned that I think that it's much more difficult to get the best out of all the people around you when you're depending on them than it is to get the most out of yourself when that's all you're depending on, that's the world I was coming from. So really team building and really making them a lot better, and trying to not dismiss, no matter how they were feeling or how they were acting or what they were doing, trying to value that, and trying to understand where they were, and trying to help them find the answer, because I don't know how you are, but there's always much more value in it for me when I learned the lesson myself versus someone else telling me that this was the way I should do something. And I think most of the guys I coached were like that. So, I knew what I didn't know, which was quite a bit about coaching, but I also knew what I knew, and I stuck to that, and I started building from those basic concepts. So literally, I got the respect from my guys starting out by beating them on a daily basis. And I told them, I said, as soon as, in college golf, there's 5 guys playing, count your 4 best scores. I told them, as soon as I'm our number 6 guy, I'm going to feel really good about where we're at. So my goal in life at that point was to continue to be beat by enough guys regularly that I was our number 6 guy on our team. And then I slowly started to learn, by making mistakes, by doing some things right, by, listening and learning from the folks that I respected, but slowly started to build myself from kind of a team captain into a coach.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, just like a quick recap. So you're an accomplished amateur golfer. You are an accomplished collegiate golfer. You played on a European tour. You stopped that. You learned golf management. You learned the golf business from the ground up. Now you're a coach. Now you coach. Sorry. I mean, what? I mean, that's a skill set, to say the least, in one area of golf or in one area of business. what next? What were
Well,
you?
then I have kids now that are 11 and 8, and about 6 years ago, so they were 5 years old and 1, or 6 years old and 2, or something like that. I had an opportunity. I got recruited to come back to my alma mater, and I was at Duke at the time coaching, and to be one of our senior associate athletic directors. And we had just hired a new football coach, Steve Sarkeesian at the time, and was asked to come back and manage football, work with our team on building a new football stadium, which was just completed this last August, and learn that part of the business, and ultimately work my way up to being an athletic director. And for me, I was traveling almost 200 days a year in my coaching position, and mostly what you do when you become especially in the higher end of the successful college coaches, is you spend most of your time recruiting, obviously raising money and doing those things. And I didn't want to miss my kids growing up. And I mean, there's definitely, there's a cost benefit, and for 200 days a year, I don't think the money I was making as a college golf coach was worth me, missing a whole bunch of T-ball games and everything else. So I decided to take that opportunity, and I spent 5 years back at the University of Washington until this last October on that track of becoming ideally an athletic director, and working on that staff there at a really crucial time. Learned. I figured, I try to keep things simple. I figured if I could apply the principles of what worked for me in golf, and just take that across 21 sports or whatever versus just one. And there were some goods and bads in that business, like anything. But totally out of the blue, I had an opportunity to meet some of the folks at the PGA Tour, and really what I was doing, a lot of my responsibilities at Washington as a senior associate AD were similar to what they were looking for an executive director at the Northern Trust Open. And I had a chance to get back in the game of golf, which I missed tremendously when I was out of it. And I also had an opportunity to be at a golf course that, I don't want to sound corny about it, but Riviera for me is it's so special to me. It's almost an emotional place for me in what it means in the game of golf, and how I feel about that golf course, and really what I think the potential is in that community in Los Angeles. So that's how I got to talking to you today.
Wow.
It's been quite a path.
Yeah, no kidding. So you made the comment how being an AD is similar to what your role is as executive director of the Northern Trust Open. Without giving away secrets or blueprints of anything, since you've been on, what are some of the similarities of your role?
Well, number one, we need to generate as much revenue as we possibly can in that event to be able to provide as much revenue for the players, which is who we work for, and to give as much money back to the community, which is why the PGA Tour exists, and to grow the game as much as we can, which are the three goals and missions of the PGA Tour. So it starts and ends. Doesn't end. It starts with revenue, without a doubt. And in the LA market, I think the folks at the PGA Tour felt like there was more upside in the LA market than we have been producing at that event. So number one, that coaching a team, got a great team that I inherited as far as our staff at the Northern Trust Open, getting everybody on the same page and getting the most out of those folks. And so I'd say those are the number 1 and 2 similarities. And then there's just the relationships, very complex relationships with, the club, and with the charity, the City of Hope, and with our title sponsor at Northern Trust, and obviously all the folks at the PGA Tour. So, I think it's really understanding relationships, understanding what's important to all the different, folks that have a stake and an interest in our success, and trying to balance those, communicate with them, build trust with them, and end up getting us, really firing on all cylinders, and having the Northern Trust. I think it's the 4th oldest tour event. 3rd or 4th. I think it's the Western Open, now the BMW, and the Canadian, and I think the Northern Trust is 3rd behind that as far as longest running tour events. So long history, and I just feel honored to be the steward of it, of the Northern Trust Open for the time that I have there.
Now, one of the things that you said that I always like to get, whoever I'm talking to, their take on. You talked about relationships and talked about trust. And I think a subcategory that you also spoke of as far as coaching a team, and we actually talked about, your experiences getting into college coaching. What's your perspective as far as just the importance of relationships and trust? I think that I think we hear it a lot, but I think that also we have a misconception. And with you in your position, you're multiple positions at that, multiple experiences. They're dealing with 18, 19-year-olds, dealing with, club pros, dealing with coaches on the level of Steve Sarkisian, et cetera, and on and on. What's your take on relationships and trust?
Well, that's I'll try to shorten the answer as much as I can. First of all, I think that the art of listening and really hearing someone is something that you cannot be good enough at, and always reminding myself of that. There's a lot of broadcasting out there, and I think that I think that if you can ask the right questions, I think that if you genuinely have interest in other people and genuinely have interest in their opinions, genuinely want their feedback, and genuinely value where they're coming from and where they want to go, I think you have a good chance of then hearing how they really feel. And I think if you can get to the core of how they really feel, and what their fears are, what their hopes, what their dreams, and all those things are, I think then you can connect with someone. Again, if you're willing to share that from your end, which I always was, I think you can really then get to the heart of what really drives them and what they really are there for. And when you can do that, I think you can at least have a base to set the compass to be able to head in the right direction. I think in the areas when I haven't been successful there or other ones I've seen, I think in almost every case, people haven't drilled down deep enough to really understand what is kind of at the heart of the matter, if you will. And, I think we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, and trying to sort of believe in that strength through diversity. Not everybody's the same, and that's a good thing. And we want to hear a different perspective and give everybody input at the beginning. I've always tried to team build by really getting everybody involved in the solution up front. Trying to identify some non-negotiables. That we are going to do this, and that. As far as with the outcome, now what do you think as far as the best way to get there? I don't think people like to be dictated to. I don't. And I think you end up finding out who really wants to be part of, that culture and that type of team, and then who is a better fit doing something else, which is also okay. Like when I coached, I told the guys coaching, I said, there's 8 or 9 of you right now, and me, one of me, or if I'm an assistant coach, 2 of us, that have the opportunity and are lucky enough, and this entire planet, you 8 and us 2, that's the only people in this world who have the opportunity to be a part of. That's a pretty special deal. So, we're all going this direction. And, if somebody doesn't want to, that's totally fine. But it's not going to be a distraction for the rest of us, really that are. Because you find in coaching anyway that, that a lot of times when you're not heading the right direction, when you're not unified, that a lot of times the folks that are the least productive on the scoreboard and producing the least usually take the most amount of energy, and that's the opposite model that you want.
That's a great answer. So with you being brought on at the end of 2013, and the 2014 Northern Trust already happening earlier this year, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to implement for the 2015 Northern Trust Open?
Good question. I'm still in the process of, doing mostly listening, mostly learning, and building the relationships with all of the key stakeholders as far as building my relationship with the folks at Northern Trust, trying to understand what's most important to them, working on building my relationship with the club, learning what's most important to Riviera long term, building my relationships with the City of Hope, and find, City of Hope is an unbelievable organization in Los Angeles there, and all of the different things that they do, and how we can help them, and then really trying to understand, when people in sales call it the code, and cracking the code, but really what moves people in Los Angeles, and how are we going to get more people out to the tournament and experiencing, the best players in the world and experiencing one of the great golf courses in the world. We need to drive our attendance up, and it's a challenging site. No, everyone has their challenges, but how do we drive that attendance up? How do we get more people to enjoy the hospitality and to be able to use this event to help drive business for themselves, or whatever they're using it for? And I'm here in Florida right now, and getting oriented with all the folks here and understanding all the different support that we have as executive directors out in the field. And it's a pretty big and pretty complex organization. And again, I'm still not comfortable that I really understand all the different moving parts to be able to set off on a direction and on a course. I was fortunate to work the last 4 months side by side with Mike Bone, who has been the general manager of the tournament the last 5 years. Mike really took on the day-to-day, and Mike took just so much time, just downloading and explaining the intricacies of this and that and the other to me, to where I was very fortunate to be able to kind of sit back and observe. We have a lot of ideas on what product can go in different places and all the different things that make our event better. But we're still just about 4 weeks, after our event, still don't have a real clear vision of where that is. But I do believe, and the reason I took this job is I do believe that the golf course in our community and what we should be one of the very best events in the world, period. And so we have some work to do to get there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a process, and if anybody has the background, I believe it's you. Just with all the, to take us even back to, you started from the ground up, bussing tables, doing bags. Like, did you ever, when you were doing that in your dad's company, did you ever see, or I guess forecast yourself in a position like this? As far as, I know a lot of younger guys we always have this sense of like, oh, I could be the head coach one day, or I could be the coach for a day, or whatever. Have you ever reflected, since you've been hired on by Northern Trust, just like to back when you first started doing, work for your dad?
That's a good question. Yeah, I guess I was also very, very lucky that I grew up in a smaller community. And so, again, when I was, growing up playing golf or, different sports or doing different things, I had some success. So I built a lot of confidence early that I always felt like I could look somebody in the eye across, and I was never afraid to compete with anybody. I also have respected how difficult it is to have success, and in anything, whether it's in athletics or business or, as a husband or, a brother or whatever it might be. So it's hard. And I love to work, and I always have. And I've loved to build stuff forever. And so when I was first working for my father, what was the most intriguing about that company was building golf courses. And I got a chance to work alongside John Fote for about 2 years when he was just breaking off and starting his design business after he had played for a while and worked with Bob Cupp. They just built Pumpkin Ridge. And so, I got to work in his office for almost 2 years. We're still great friends, but really learn golf course design, really learn golf course construction. I was put in charge of the building at Langdon Farms because we didn't have anybody else, quite honestly, to put on the project. So they assigned me as the building, the owner's rep and the building manager on our side, and working with the architect and making all those value engineering decisions and understanding the operations and why the golf shop is here, and the size of the counter and the flow and all those different things. So all the solving the puzzles has always really intrigued me, and so and I've just always loved to build stuff, and I think that's still what I do today. It's more people than structures, but it's still the intrigue of trying to solve a pretty complex issue, and so it's just evolved. But I'll tell you, when I was first working behind the counter at Angel Park in Las Vegas, when I got done on the greens crew and I was done bussing tables and I was inside as one of our assistant pros. It's a 36-hole facility. And I think you're allowed, I can't remember, but in the PGA program for apprentices, I think you're allowed, I don't know, 3 or 4 or something per 18 holes to have. And I think I was like 12th or something on the list. And it takes 3 or 4 years to get through the program. I couldn't even, I was on the waiting list, to even get into the program to start, my apprenticeship in the PGA. And in that time, when you're kind of looking up, I'll never forget that, when I was like 24 or 5 or something at the time, and I'm looking up, all the guys and gals ahead of me and that process ahead of me. I mean, man, it just seems like you're never going to get out of that. But I also have had the good fortune to have some great mentors and great people giving me advice. And they said, it's not that complicated. You work harder than anybody else. You show up earlier. You tell the truth all the time. You're reliable, and you're on time. And it'll end up taking care of itself. And you stay with those principles, you're not going to have much trouble. So fortunately, I've always tried to keep it simple and just put my head down and had some success. But again, we hopefully there's a lot more to go, obviously. And I'm to the point, I'm 45, and I'm to the point in life where I've got some friends of mine that are retiring and are financially in that place, and which we're nowhere near. So there's been a lot of other folks that have had a tremendous amount of success, and sometimes even talking to you today and reflecting back on some of these things, which I don't do very much, which seems like there's been a lot done. I mean, I'm like, wow, there's still a lot more to go.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So this has been a great conversation, great interview. It's funny. It's funny going into it. You do your research and you have somewhat of a skeleton of what you think is how it's going to end up. But it's always awesome to be at the very end and be like, wow, I didn't see it going that way at all.
I have a question. I have a question for the interviewer. You
shoot.
What was your perception going in, and where do you think it would have gone, and what are the differences for you?
Well, the cool thing about talking with you, and I think this is not a slight on anybody else in a dare I say management position in golf, is that you're one of the few guys that I've talked to who runs operations for an event, have you, and you're reflective and you're very open about you. A lot of guys are very much about their baby, their tournament, their golf course, and I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. But the cool thing, and I think I'm one of those, almost one of those Phil Jackson type of guys where it's like I think that your system or your team or your tournament it tends to reflect the things that you believe in. And I'm getting that right now, and I did not see that at all. I did not see that coming at all. I thought this was going to be about you and your playing career and coaching and, the more top-level type stuff, if you will, not necessarily the soul, which is, I'm saying this, and I'm kind of shaking my head, but that's awesome because I don't ever expect that, I don't ever expect to go that deep. So it's awesome.
Great. Well, I've enjoyed it as well. The format's been terrific, and hope whoever listens to this enjoys it. But a lot of times, you don't have the time to get, in my opinion, to the real heart and soul of what it is, because we all try to rush through it, and people's attention span, if anyone's lasted this long, and that's great. But if you do last through it, a lot of times some of the best things are at the end.
Oh, no doubt. Well, funny you should mention that. My last question is, and I know that you've just been brought on. You haven't even been in office, if you will, for 2 months. What is one thing, those of us who are looking forward to next PGA Tour season opening up, and even the Northern Trust Open, what's one thing that we should be looking forward to as far as whether it's a format or a new angle, or what's one thing that we should be excited about for the Northern Trust Open 2015?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, and I don't want to make something up. I don't know any one thing in particular. I'll say, though, that, for me as a fan, if I just put my PGA Tour fan hat on, what I think is really intriguing about the game right now, the people that are tracking the game of golf, is the youth movement in the game. I think we saw that obviously last week. I think, Patrick Reed goes and beats, the best field all year long, for his second win this year or whatever it meant, third in however many, weeks. And this guy was Monday qualifying.
Yeah.
Like 2 years ago it was. And, you see Jordan Spieth come on from not being a full member on tour to being the rookie of the year and play on the President's Cup. And I think what these guys are doing at the age they're doing it is just phenomenal. And what I think that the game is transitioning into, rather than coming out and having, again, and Tiger Woods in particular has, a real aura around him, and Phil Mickelson, and there are a handful or whatever it might be of players that are just iconic players of our time. However, there are a lot of other players that I think are really, really intriguing, with Henrik Stenson and how he played last year, but just different personalities, and there's a lot more to some of these players but I think that people are so used to, the domination era in certain sports, and I think we're evolving out of that. And I think we're in a very interesting time. And to me, whether it's the Northern Trust Open, and we had John Merrick win it the year before, who played for me at UCLA. And so as a proud coach, I couldn't be, more excited for somebody to come in and win, his home event. He's from Los Angeles. And then Bubba Watson this year, and all the stories. To me, I think golf is in about its most exciting time as far as who's going to win this week and what's going to happen and how is that going to shake out. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, I think it's going to be one of those real definitive times in our game overall, and I think it's exciting to be part of it.
Yeah, as soon as the question came out of my mouth, I was like, oh man, I kind of put him in the corner, stepping into this position. But I agree with you. I think as a fan, I don't want to use the word parody at all, because I think that word is misused in sports. That's not really entertaining. What's entertaining is talent, and that talent getting a chance to show itself. And I believe that a lot of those talents, they start to take roots in the Northern Trust Open. They start to take root in these other tournaments that not everybody gets to be Augusta or, the Players Open or anything like that. So, I think that's a great answer, and that's the future of the game, and that's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I just love this game, and again, I respect these guys so much and what they do, and I just think, again, we're in one of the most exciting times, and I feel blessed to have the opportunities I've had and to do the best I can at Northern Trust with our team, and spend the time with you today, and always want to give back to the game that's given me as much as it has. Awesome. Well, Odie, I appreciate you coming on to the show, and I appreciate everybody else that's been a part of this interview. Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thanks again.